The moment death arrived, it was 3:14 a.m. The body was already cold, but the room wasn't. Something lingered in the air, like a presence. The daughter, sitting silently beside the bed, felt a sudden chill. As if an invisible breeze had passed right through her. The machines went still. The silence felt final. And yet, at that precise moment, something else was beginning. Something unseen, but just as real as everything we call life. Now what if I told you that death isn't the end? That there's a hidden process, sacred, mysterious, and utterly extraordinary, that unfolds the moment a heart stops beating? This isn't just a theory. It's something millions have touched, yet only a few dare to speak of. It's called the soul's release. The silent unraveling of the silver cord. The crossing between dimensions. Have you ever wondered what happens in that very first second, after the final breath? I promise you, it's not what you think. For centuries, religions, mystical traditions, and even bold scientists have tried to describe what lies beyond. Different words. Same truth. The soul doesn't die. It continues. It sees. It feels. And, perhaps most profound of all, it understands. It awakens. And in that awakening begins a journey. A reunion with the higher self. A discovery of the invisible laws. A deep dive into the co-creation of reality. And an expansion of consciousness that redefines everything we thought we knew. And it all begins with death. What you're about to discover may challenge everything you've ever been told about the end of life. Because the truth is, there is no end. It's not a stop. It's a shift. The stage changes, but the actor continues. And the question isn't if we continue, but where we go. Why some souls linger. And how this invisible destination is decided. And more importantly, what can you do, while you're still alive? To transform the course of your journey after death? Welcome to a deep dive behind the curtain of reality. But I'll say this up front. After this video, you'll never look at life, or death, the same way again. Picture this. You're lying still. Motionless. But wide awake. You see your body from the outside, like watching a suit that no longer fits. This moment isn't fantasy. It's not horror. It's not even sad. It's familiar, like returning home after a long, tiring journey. Like slipping off a heavy coat you've worn your whole life. Spirituality calls it sacred. A silent pause. Where something inside whispers. It's time. There's still a connection. An invisible thread that holds the soul to the body. If only for a while. It's known in ancient traditions as the silver cord. Imagine it as a glowing strand of light. Pulsing gently. A final bridge between two realities. This cord is what makes the transition gradual. It gives your higher self time to observe, to adjust. To understand what's unfolding. And then, when the time is right, the cord dissolves. And the soul is free. Completely. It's not ripped away. It's drawn. Pulled gently into a new frequency. And it's in that frequency where the expansion of consciousness begins. Where an entirely different layer of reality starts to unfold. Vaster, clearer, more profound than anything we've ever experienced here. I remember a story that stuck with me. A woman, after a sudden accident, had a near-death experience. She said she was greeted by beings of light. Not with words, but with a feeling. She described it as diving into an ocean made entirely of love. No judgment. Only absolute understanding. She said it felt like her divine spark had remembered exactly who she was. And just like that, her entire view of life changed. And she wasn't alone. I've heard dozens of stories like this. And after a while, it becomes hard, really hard, to believe that everything ends here. What's even more fascinating is this. You don't have to almost die to experience this. In deep spiritual practices, like conscious astral projection, people report the same thing. The lightness. The distance from the body. The clarity that they're still co-creating reality, even without a body. And what does that reveal? That death is just a transition. A portal between layers of existence. Where evolution continues. Just on a different frequency. In a different realm. But hold on, that's just the beginning. What happens right after the soul detaches is even more mysterious. The first 7 days after death carry secrets that most people have never imagined. Ancient rituals. Silent transitions. Moments so subtle, yet so powerful. They could change the way you see life itself. Very few people know this. But those first 7 days are intense. Not just for the one who passed, but for the ones left behind. You see, the soul often stays close. Sometimes right inside the house. Watching loved ones, trying to make sense of what just happened. It feels everything. The grief. The confusion. The prayers. The tension in the room. That's why so many spiritual traditions emphasize peace, stillness, and elevated intention during this time. Because the environment becomes the soul's first cradle in this new phase of being. Here's a detail that'll send chills down your spine. Sometimes, the soul doesn't even know it's died. It senses something's different. But it's still connected to the emotions of earthly life. I've heard countless stories from people who had vivid dreams. Visits from loved ones who had just passed. They came confused. Asking for help. Or saying they were lost. It's not just coincidence. It's a glimpse into this delicate phase. Where the divine spark is still searching for its direction. During this time, the spirit may try to communicate. Sometimes it's subtle. A familiar scent. A picture falling. A song playing out of nowhere. Other times, it's direct. A dream so vivid, it feels more like a memory than fantasy. This is where spirituality matters most. Because the contact you feel is part of the co-creation that still bridges these two worlds. Want to help someone who's passed on? Elevate your vibration. Send love. Offer gratitude. And above all, don't fall into despair. Because suffering slows their journey. Have you ever noticed how certain Eastern cultures have rituals just for those 7 days? That's not superstition. That's wisdom. Every act, every candle lit, every moment of silence, has purpose. It soothes the soul's passage, strengthens the bond with the higher self. And anchors peace. And these rituals aren't just for the departed. They heal those who remain. They offer closure. Acceptance. A kind of quiet, sacred healing. That most people never even realize is happening. But here's what no one probably told you. After those 7 days, something even deeper begins. The spirit enters a phase of review. And that's when some uncomfortable truths start to surface. Truths that aren't easy to face. But they're a vital part of what comes next. Imagine being led into a kind of cinema of the soul. But instead of watching a movie, you're watching your life. Every single moment. Every word you spoke. Every act of love. And every one you regret. That's how many describe the next 40 days after death. A time when your consciousness expands even more. And the soul flips through its existence. Like reading the pages of its own diary. But this time, with nothing hidden. Just truth. There's no angry God pointing a finger. There's just a mirror. And in that mirror, the soul sees who it truly was. What it co-created. What it could have done differently. Where its divine spark got dimmed by ego. And here's the thing. It's not painful because of punishment. It's painful because of clarity. Like realizing you could have loved more. Forgiven sooner. Hugged a little longer. That kind of regret? It becomes a powerful fuel for growth. It doesn't drag you down. It lifts you toward evolution. And the most beautiful part? There is always forgiveness. Always healing. That's the real miracle of what happens after life. Many times, spiritual guides, mentors, or even loved ones who passed before us, appear during this process. Not to blame. Not to scold. They come like teachers. Loving, patient. Pointing out where the soul stumbled. But also where it shined. These encounters often lead to new decisions. Some souls choose to return to Earth soon. Others remain in spiritual realms. To continue their healing. Before stepping into a new mission. And it's here, in this sacred moment of review, that the higher self steps in fully. It's no longer about emotion or confusion. It's about clarity. About seeing the bigger picture. Without rush. And if you think this all sounds like something only people who meditate too much talk about, think again. Near-death experiencers, people with no interest in mysticism, have described this exact phase with astonishing consistency. They say things like, I felt the pain I caused. I felt the love I left unspoken. It's like a spiritual justice system built right into the soul. You don't need a courtroom. Your own awareness becomes the judge. And honestly, it's not scary. It's healing. Because it proves something powerful. That the journey continues. And no matter how we lived, there is always room to grow. We can always become better. And that realization, it brings peace. But this cycle of healing, it's only preparation. Because after those 40 days, something shifts. The soul begins to feel a kind of magnetic pull. Not a decision. Not a choice. But an energetic attraction. Like a current. Pulling the spirit toward its next destination. And that pull isn't random. It's determined by vibration. By frequency. By everything the soul co-created while it was here. That's when the portals begin to open. At this stage, the soul doesn't get to choose its destination. Like flipping through a vacation catalog. Free will doesn't work the same way in the vibrational realm. What happens is simple, and yet, profound. The soul is pulled. Like a spiritual magnet. Its frequency syncs with portals that either open, or don't. Each portal leads somewhere. Spiritual cities. Healing colonies. Dense zones. Astral planes. It all depends on the frequency the soul lived by. On what it co-created while on Earth. Ever heard of Nasolar? Or Shambhala? Different traditions speak of these places. Not as fantasy. But as realities beyond this one. Where spiritual evolution continues. But on the flip side, there are also zones of imbalance. Places where souls heavily attached to guilt, hate, or ego find themselves temporarily stuck. Not as punishment, but as a mirror. It's like the divine spark, forgotten during life, now has to relearn how to shine. Through the very shadows it helped create. Sounds heavy? It is. But there's beauty in that too. Because no soul is stuck forever. Spirituality is movement. Transformation. A constant unfolding. There are even missionary spirits, like cosmic firefighters, who descend into those places to help lost souls find their way back to light. And here's one of the best-kept secrets. You don't have to wait for death to change your vibration. Every small choice, compassion, gratitude, inner reflection, is already shaping your invisible future. There's an old saying: you don't go to heaven, you become it, or hell, from within. And that's exactly it. The soul creates the place it ends up in. That's the law of attraction, in its purest and most honest form. The energy you carry here builds the reality that draws you in over there. Want a simple example? Someone who lives in constant inner conflict won't immediately match the frequency of a city of peace. They'll need time, maybe in a neutral zone, to recalibrate before aligning with something higher. And in that new spiritual environment, something fascinating happens. Even after crossing the veil, the soul still remembers, still feels, still loves. And often, it returns. Sometimes in dreams. Sometimes through signs, messages, or quiet whispers. The connection with the living never truly ends. But it happens in ways most people don't really understand. Even after crossing through portals and settling into a new realm of learning, many souls still carry deep emotional bonds with those they left behind. Not out of attachment, but out of love. It's common for the spirit to return, especially in the first few months after death, to check in on loved ones, to bring comfort, or even to inspire life-changing decisions. You know those dreams that feel more like visits than fantasies? That sudden wave of presence in an empty room? It's not just grief. It might be the divine spark of someone who once walked beside you, now reaching through dimensions to say, I'm still here. Spiritual visits aren't usually like in the movies. No dramatic apparitions or floating figures. They're subtle, symbolic, and deeply emotional. A scent that comes out of nowhere. A song that plays at just the right moment. An object that mysteriously moves. Spirituality has its own language. And it speaks through synchronicity. When your heart is open, when your frequency is lifted through prayer, stillness, or meditation, you begin to receive the signal more clearly. And yes, some people feel fear when these signs appear. That's totally normal. But fear? It blocks the connection. Love, on the other hand, opens doors. When you think lovingly of someone who's passed, when you send light, that light becomes a bridge between worlds. One powerful way to help is by co-creating peaceful spaces. Raising your energy, lifting your thoughts. That's how you support a soul that's moved on. Light a candle with intention. Play uplifting music. Create a small altar with meaningful objects. It's like saying, I feel you. I honor you. I remember. And that energy reaches them. It crosses the veil. Not as words, but as pure vibration. As light. Here's something curious. Over the years, many people have reported powerful inner transformations after these spiritual encounters. Career changes. Family reconciliations. Even chance meetings that seem too perfect to be accidents. Coincidence? Maybe. But maybe, just maybe, it's a soul on the other side. Expanded in consciousness. Gently whispering inspiration into someone they still love. Because growth isn't just individual. Sometimes, your higher self connects with someone else's and becomes a silent mentor. Still guiding you with the same love they held in life. The truth is, no one makes it through this life without losing someone. And sooner or later, we'll all be the one lying still, while the unseen begins to unfold around us. But now you know. Death isn't the end. It's a continuation. A rebirth. A direct invitation from the spiritual world. A call to awaken while there's still time. So let me ask you. Are you living as someone preparing to evolve? Or are you drifting through life, caught in distractions that won't matter after your final breath? Because everything you think, feel, and choose, right now, is already shaping where your soul will go next. Do you want to be pulled into dense zones? Or step consciously into your next spiritual reality? And beyond that, have you been paying attention to life's subtle messages? That dream that felt too real to be random. That sign that showed up the moment you thought of someone who's gone. The connection was never lost. But it does need your attention. Your intention. Your commitment to expanding your consciousness. So if something stirred in you today, don't stop here. This journey is only beginning. Hit subscribe. Turn on notifications. Stay with me as we keep diving deeper into the mysteries of spirituality, soul evolution, the law of attraction, and everything your higher self is longing for you to remember. Because in the end, no one really dies. We just go home.